Welcome back to the show. Yes, Mélanie Joly is in studio, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, Liberal MP for Ahuntsic-Cartierville, and in town to talk about a couple of big stories. First of all, welcome back. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
We saw each other in the summer.
Yeah.
So I don't feel I have to go back every time, but for me, it's really weird. You and I have known each other for a while.
Yeah.
When you decided to run for the mayor in Montreal. So what's that, 2013? When is that?
2013, indeed.
Okay.
So 12 years ago, yeah.
And now here you are, you're a federal minister.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I kind of feel like I take pride in knowing that this is how well you've done in your professional. I don't know. You walked in here as
if you want to own a part of it,
fine.
no problem.
Thank you. You walked in
I'm
here.
very generous.
You walked in here as a complete unknown in 2013. You were a lawyer.
Yeah.
Nobody knew who you were.
No.
And then, boom, you're running for mayor. You came in, you did one of your first interviews, I think, in English in the studio.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then you lose the mayorship by, 30,000 votes, somewhere around there? Not by a lot.
Less than that, I think 22,000, something like that. Anyways, I was close second to Denis Coderre at the time. Yeah. Then 2 years later, I decided to go into federal politics, and I've been MP for Ahuntsic-Cartierville since then. And I've been in cabinet since then.
Even though you lied to me when I asked you at the time, will you be going into federal politics? And you were very, very coy. And you saying, well, I don't want to talk about it.
No, I just I wanted kids. I thought it was difficult to do federal politics at the time. I was 34, so I thought, well, I'd rather be in municipal politics to raise my family. And eventually, unfortunately, that didn't happen. And so, I don't think it was all badly intended at all.
No, for sure it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I'm kidding when I say, I kind of take it like, we knew you from day one. I couldn't be prouder of you. I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Not that it's an easy portfolio. You've been through a couple of portfolios in the federal government. But let me talk about a story. I didn't even know this was a thing until I saw this in the news yesterday. I saw Soraya Martinez-Ferrado, who you know very well.
Yes, of course.
And all of a sudden, Montreal East, or the eastern part of the island, which has been ignored for the most part for so many years, all of a sudden it's in the news. There's some huge plans here. So can you give us an idea of what's going on?
Well, Soraya, the new mayor, who's a good friend of mine, we used to be cabinet colleagues as well. For her, it's always been a priority. And she said during her campaign that, she wanted to focus on the redevelopment of the East End. So we were there with Christine Fréchette, who's the Minister of the Economy, and myself. I'm in charge of the economy, and I'm also in charge of the agency, in charge of supporting the development of the different regions of Quebec. Mm-hmm. All that to say, it was Soraya's first big gathering as mayor, and she wanted to send a clear message. So I wanted to be there. We are investing in very important projects in the East End, including the Montreal Port and the Contrecoeur development. It's part of our major projects. We're also working very hard to attract new investments, including a solar panel company.
That's if I read that right, that's $1 billion investment.
It's $1 billion investment. It's around 1,000 jobs. So we're still working with the company to make sure that it is a very thorough and very credible business plan. But they want to become a major manufacturer of solar panel. And we're competing against China. We can't have that dependency towards China. Right. So that's also part of the discussions. And also, obviously, because we're the federal government, because we believe also in supporting major infrastructure projects, there are discussions of how do we do a good, connection between the East End and downtown, like we have done for, basically the West, the North, and the South.
Yeah, as I said off the top, the East has been left out. I've never really understood why. I mean, a long time ago, the East was very busy, industrials, whatever, and then all of a sudden kind of falls off the map. Mm-hmm. I read the solar panel deal, which is, as I said, worth $1 billion. And I guess one of the concerns is when you live in Quebec, we hear $1 billion and we're like, wait a sec, didn't we lose that on Northvolt? And then there's Lion Electric. There's so many other things here that have not worked out well for the government. What stands in the way of this thing? Like, what has to happen for this to actually come to fruition?
Well, I think the investors need to make sure that, the business team, the leadership team needs to make sure that they have the right investors. And based on that, once they have a really strong business plan, which, is in development, they will come to us and to Quebec and to Montreal to see what can be done. And then we'll see whether it's worth it. But I think right now, the signals are positive. But I can't commit here today because obviously, when you're in the job of being in charge of the economy at a time where there is a trade war, you're trying to see what are the right investments in how can you obviously protect jobs, because there are lots of sectors that are, tariffed and therefore under threats. Lumber, steel, aluminum, auto, particularly in Ontario, and copper, which is much more in the east end of Montreal. And then you have to find ways to, notwithstanding all the uncertainty and what's going on in the White House, etc., you have to find a way to create jobs. And so that's why this investment can be interesting. But what I'm really focusing on, Aaron, is right now we're working on increasing our investments in defense and creating an entire industry of defense across the country. So really being able to build the right aircrafts, the right drones, the right AI, the right tech, the right ships. All of that is needed to protect Canada and to support NATO.
And part of that, obviously, the Build Canada plan, which would use steel, lumber, et cetera, from here.
Exactly.
I'm curious, too. So the story a couple of weeks ago was we have to buy these jets. We were going to buy them originally from Lockheed Martin or Boeing or whoever. Then, of course, the Swedes show up and let you know that, they have a craft. They would create thousands of jobs. Where are we on that? Are we any closer to having that deal done?
So what happened is back in the spring, I was with Prime Minister Carney and the Minister of Defense at the time, Bill Blair, when Prime Minister Carney decided to suspend the F-35 contract to put it, under study. And meanwhile, I was then appointed Minister of Industry, and I went with the aerospace sector at the big air show, which basically gathers all the countries, which was in Paris this year, at the Paris Air Show. And I sat down with the Canadian-owned companies in the aerospace sector. So CAE, Bombardier, IMP, the Avalon. And I said, folks, we will rebuild the aerospace sector in Canada. We are very strong. We're part of, top 4, top 5 in the world, but we can be better. And we're not in the defense sector. We will rebuild our capacity through a defense investment. And I think the CEOs at the time looked at me a bit skeptical. And then afterwards, later on, in August, I went with the Secretary of State, Stephen Fuhr, to Sweden. We have a good relationship with Sweden. We were the first to ratify Sweden's accession to NATO. And when Saab, the Swedish company, tried to get the fighter jet contract at the time from Canada, Sweden was not part of NATO. And also, a year ago, I published as the former foreign minister the Arctic policy, the Arctic foreign policy, and the idea was to be closer to Arctic countries, including obviously Sweden. So Steve Fuhr and I went to Sweden, went to Saab, and we visited the Saab facility, and we saw what was the capability. And we thought it could be interesting to put Saab and Bombardier together to do more business together. And so then eventually the idea came up that there could be a way to build fighter jets in Canada. Now, we have to be careful because obviously this is a decision that includes the military that have, obviously their word to say, but also we wanted to know whether there was a capability in Canada to do so. And Saab came up back with a very important project, which would create 9,000 jobs, a lot in Montreal, a lot in Toronto, but actually a lot across the country, with a supply chain across the country. And it is to build not only Gripen E fighter jets in Canada, but it is to build them for Ukraine, and it is to build them for export and the rest of the world. So it's between 150 to 200 jets. It's really important.
A lot of jobs, a lot of money.
A lot of jobs, a lot of money. There's also another project of building with Bombardier a surveillance plane, which would be called the Global Lion. That's 3,600 jobs. Now, my job is not to advocate for one company or the other. I'm also in contact with Lockheed Martin. I'll be going in January to see their facility, because I think that in the F-35 contract, we could have had more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the biggest contract of the entire federal government, of all the companies in the world and in Canada. At one point, we need to have more. And so I really want to make sure that we can have the conversation with CAF, but also last week I received the industrial benefit analysis of Saab for these projects. And so my team and I will study it.
Okay.
And so I think it's important the Canadians know, because it's a big decision. We have to be much more, we have to have greater autonomy when it comes to our defense sector. And at the same time, we have to be able to create jobs at a time where there is a real trade war going on.
I have to take a break, but I want to come back and pick up on that, because one of the things that's a consideration here is we had to deal with the U.S. The U.S. doesn't like when we take what they thought was a deal and give it to someone else, and that obviously has to be a consideration, right? I think this was already a consideration when when the Swedes even got involved to begin with. All of a sudden, wait, you're not going to give the deal to Lockheed Martin? You're going to take it away from the U.S. and give it to a company in Europe?
Well, following the contract is 16 aircrafts. And so obviously we will have F-35s. The question is not whether...
So you do both?
Well, then it's not up to me to decide. It's up to the Prime Minister and all. But we will have that conversation, obviously, with CAF. But I think when we took the decision, many things were different. First, we were not investing as much in defense. So we want to make sure we make the right investments. We want to create jobs through also these investments. And we want our Canadian Armed Forces to be part of the decision making. So that's why the decision has not been taken.
Okay.
But a lot of the elements of the the decision making are coming together.
Okay.
Hear all the latest news and have your say. This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand on CJAD 800.
Welcome back. We're joined in studio by Mélanie Joly. She is Canada's, and I want to give a long title, by the way, I should mention, but basically just say, when it comes to, how do you sort of
just
sum it up?
Minister of Industry.
Industry is good.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something we know is coming up, and that's CUSMA, right? So Donald Trump kind of giving hints that, when it's renegotiated, unless, of course, we assume he tears it up first, what's going to happen? Because now apparently I heard supply management is on the table and other things. Where are we with CUSMA, and what are you expecting is going to happen? Like, what's the next step here?
Well, listen, first and foremost, I've said it and I'll continue to say it. There will be a lot of unpredictability. There's only one man in the U.S. administration that really decides. We know who he is. He's the president of the United States. Now, meanwhile, we're ready. We've done all the, engagement with stakeholders that is necessary. We'll continue to do so. But meanwhile, well, yes, there is the renegotiation of CUSMA. There are tariffs that are affecting around 200,000 workers. Because they're in the auto, steel, aluminum, lumber, and copper sector. So it is not the same, atmosphere, to say the least, than when we were negotiated. The context is completely different. Lots of countries now have deals with the U.S., but we still have the best deal, which is, apart from the tariff sectors, we have 0% tariffs.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's a big part. Because the part that is being tariffed is hurting, obviously, the auto sectors you've just outlined. I wonder at some point, you were there, you were in that room, you were in the Oval Office when Mark Carney was there, and a lot of Canadians were optimistic at the time that something might come from that. I don't think much has. And then, of course, Doug Ford decided to run that Ronald Reagan ad, which robbed Donald Trump the wrong way. Are negotiations still continuing? We don't hear much about this at all right now. What is going on between Canada and the U.S. in terms of negotiations?
Well, listen, there are engagement, and, these are questions much more for the Prime Minister and the Minister LeBlanc, which are in charge. But what I can tell you, though, is, and what I know is we have a lot of support in the U.S. on the private sector side. We have a lot of support also on both sides of the political spectrum. And so we have allies. Now, how things will evolve, we'll see. But while I'm in charge of dealing with the impacts of the trade war, so really the impacts on our sectors that are tariffed, I must say that we've been able to create 60,000 jobs in September, 67,000 jobs in October, 54,000 jobs in November. The growth rate of Canada is at 2.6%. We have the highest GDP growth in the G7, which, to be frank, nearly a year ago, you would have told me that
other end of the scale.
There were lots of skeptics. And at the same time, we've been able to. Inflation is under control at 2.2%, and salaries growth is actually at 3.3%. So salaries are growing faster than inflation. Now, is everything perfect? No. And I know that people listening to me right now must say, well, grocery prices are an issue. We know that. But our goal also is, we are increasing the support to make sure that people can be able to have access to more money in their pockets because we decided to cut taxes. Yeah. We are also protecting dental care, pharma care, everything, childcare that is so important to our social safety net. And at the same time, we were given the mandate to build a very strong Canadian economy. And that's what we're working on. And that's my job. Of course, with Prime Minister Carney.
Yeah, I don't want to run out of time, so I have to ask the inevitable question. So you're a federal Liberal, but you know all about politics. You're from Quebec. Yesterday, actually officially this morning, Pablo Rodriguez called it quits, resigned as head of the party. I'm curious for your reaction to that.
Well, I think it's a very sad situation. At the same time, it was time to move on for the sake of the Liberal Party of Quebec and for the sake of everyone. And at the same time, I spoke to Pablo yesterday because we were colleagues and friends for years. And what a very prominent politician taught me years ago, and his name was Brian Mulroney, is that you reach out to people when when it's tough, because usually nobody does. And that's when you remember who reached out. Mm-hmm. And actually, Mulroney, when I went through my own issues at the time when I was Heritage Minister, was the only one to reach out to me. And so that for that. And, I think also the Liberal Party of Canada is a different party from the Liberal Party of Quebec. There are some, different volunteers, different caucus, obviously. And I'm not personally a member of the Liberal Party of Quebec.
Okay, but I will ask the question because someone asked it actually yesterday when we said, who do you think might be, a person who might decide to run for the leadership? Your name came up. Not surprising. You're from here. You have any interest in running for leadership of the Provincial Liberal Party?
Well, a lot of people reached out to me, and I'm very, I feel, very honored. But my job is to be on the front lines of this trade war. And a year ago, when asked whether I would want to run to become leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, at the time I said, well, I would love to become the first woman in charge of the Liberal Party of Canada. But I was a foreign minister, and I thought that I needed to choose my country over my party. And I needed to be able to do the job as foreign minister at a time where there was real threats to our country. And you know what? I was right, because a month later, while I was foreign minister, what happened? The trade war started, and the tariffs started. It was at the time the fentanyl tariffs. We were able to negotiate. I worked a lot with Dom LeBlanc on this, the minister at the time in charge of trade with the U.S. And then eventually, now I left the diplomatic front of the trade war, and now I'm on the economic front. And the battle is the economy, and the front lines are all these workers in the auto sector, mainly in Ontario, in the aluminum sector in Quebec, in the steel sector in Quebec and Ontario, and some of them also in Saskatchewan, in the softwood lumber, which are in BC mainly, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, and the copper sector, which are a lot in BC and Quebec. So
you have plenty to do.
Yeah, but not only that, I've met these workers. I've gone to their, the front lines of this war. I've met with them. I was in Brampton when Stellantis announced that they were laying off people. I was in Sault Ste. Marie when when Algoma Steel decided to lay off people, and I was frickin' frustrated with that, and with Stellantis as well. And I'm a fighter, and I'm not up to let go this. I don't want to let go this fight, because I think we can win it. So, no, I'm not ready to go to Quebec. Sorry, I'm very passionate about it, but that's what I believe in.
The answer is no.
No.
Today.
No.
No, just no. Okay, listen, we're out of time. I very much appreciate you giving us the time you gave me. And I wish you nothing but the best. You know, you have a big file, and as you said, there's a lot to still have to do here, big challenges. So thank you for coming in, and
it's always a
look
pleasure.
Forward to seeing you again soon.
Happy holidays
Same
to you and your family.
Take care.
The newest tracks. Let's go.
New music.
And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.